commissioned by the Agua Caliente Band of Indians to create 2 tables for a new space in their hotel. This is actually the second time that we've worked with these clients before, and we made a previous video a few years back called Building Furniture for a 5-Star Hotel, and those were pieces that's going into the same hotel as these 2 tables here. The original commission involved a big, almost conference table, but it actually went in their cigar room, and a matching credenza that went in the same room at the end of that table. Those pieces were constructed using Bastogne walnut with this deep blue resin. So for this commission, they've selected a couple slabs of Canadian black walnut, but what they're going to do to have them match is use that exact same deep blue resin from our commission a few years back. The tricky and important part for this build was ensuring that we're able to replicate that color accurately so that these tables don't show up and they have 2 new tables that don't match their old ones that were ordered as a matching set. You can imagine the beginning of this process begins very similar to every other build. We first begin by breaking the slabs down into their rough size. We remove all that bark off the outside edges so that we can get a strong bond to the edge, and from there we can head upstairs and stick this mold down to start getting ready for the pour. Our molds are just constructed from MDF that we've coated in tuck tape, and something we don't usually show on video but is a critical part of the process is we have a bead of silicone that goes around all of the seams on our mold. So not only do we do a bead that goes underneath the entire box that we squish down, we also then do a couple beads of silicone on the inside and outside of the form just to further prevent any leaks that happen. You could probably get away with just doing a bead on either the inside or the outside, but we like to have a little bit of redundancy there. Here you can see that color that we've mixed up. So it's what we call our deep blue resin. Essentially, it's made with a combination of Color Effects pigments and our Black Forest metallic pigments. Now, the other challenge we had with this build is we weren't able to pour the 2 tables back to back. We did the first table here that you're seeing now, and then we had some other projects in between that had to be worked on. So we had to be sure that we wrote this recipe down to make sure that we could get that exact match a few weeks later when we go to do that second pour. Now, some of you might be asking, well, why don't you just pour them both at once? And if I'm being honest, the realistic reason is we just simply don't have enough space. You know, we're not a huge giant shop. Sometimes it might look like it from online, but we really don't have all that much space in our back shop area, and that's why our pour room is situated upstairs like it is. That's another common question that I see sometimes is, you know, why do you guys spend all this time lifting your tables up and down the stairs when you could just pour all on one level? And if we had space to do it, like I said earlier, I really wish we could, but we have to utilize every single square foot of space in our shop, and this whole upstairs area, just as of like 5 or 6 years ago, was basically sitting dead with storage, so we renovated it and made this really nice pour room area. If you're planning on building your own pour room, there's a couple things I can recommend. Making sure it's sealed off from dust is obviously critical because you don't want that getting into your pour, but environmental control is probably the biggest, most important thing to ensure you have success. So our pour room is air conditioned to about 15 degrees Celsius. I'll put the Fahrenheit on the screen, or Haley will right now for our American friends. And we also have a cooling table that cools the resin during the entire curing process. So by having that cold room and that cold table, we really slow things down and we prevent any chances of overheating. And in an extreme situation, if you get lots of overheating, the epoxy can actually expand so much during that heat cycle that when it cools back down, it will shrink and you can get cracks that form in the entire surface across the table, which ultimately doesn't ruin it. I'd be lying if I said we hadn't had that happen before, but those end up being show pieces or spec pieces that stay here at the shop. So we've definitely got a few of them around here. Here's this second table now a couple weeks later, and you can see that we've done a pretty good job getting a nice match with the blue color there. So from here, the process is the same. We'll let it sit for 7 days in the mold. We'll get it cured. We'll get it onto the CNC machine for flattening, and from there we can begin with the rest of the build.
Well, obviously not.
He just says he wants to flood.
Wow.
And here we are for one of the last videos, sending this piece through our old 54-inch drum sander. I'm mentioning this in all the videos almost every week, but it's really because we're so excited. We have a new 54-inch helical planer sander combo machine, that's a mouthful, coming from SCM that's going to be delivered around the middle of July, and it is going to greatly expedite our entire manufacturing process. What you saw us do there was we CNC flattened and then went through the sander, and that flattening process can take hours on a big table, whereas with the new machine, it's one pass and it's going to do everything at the same time. Right now, Randy's just using our track saw to cut this piece down to its size. Again, this is pretty similar process that we follow for our builds, and a tip that I always like to give is just making this in multiple passes so that you can ensure you get a nice clean cut here. And as you can imagine, since this is a matching set, we're cutting the exact same dimension out of that other piece here.
Don't worry about it. I'll be fine. You will. Let's see. That wasn't too bad. Third try, that's pretty good.
That was only like 20 seconds. That was very good.
Forced Randy to do it for like 5 minutes one time.
We pulled the walnut for this job all from the same tree, which in my opinion is a really important step of the process if you're going to be creating these matching sets of pieces. We did the same thing for the cigar room set that we made for them a couple years ago. Both those pieces came from the same tree, and it really just gives a nice continuity between the pieces. In our opinion, material selection is one of the most important parts of the process to ensure that everything looks the way you've expected it will. If you're just pulling random dimensional lumber, or you're just going to any old place to buy your slabs and you're getting one here and one there, even though they might both be walnut, let's say, you can get drastically different colors, even in trees that grow in the same area. A lot of the times trees can absorb different minerals through the soil, and it will just give wildly different colors. Like we have pieces of Canadian black walnut that have almost like a greenish kind of hue. They're more muted in their color and more even. Whereas these slabs that we have here right now in the video, they have almost this red undertone, which just gives them this really rich finished appearance. Another interesting fact to mention about the coloration of walnut that can make a big difference is the way that it's been dried. So there's two common ways that wood can be dried. That's either through kiln drying or air drying. Kiln drying is the faster of the two processes. It's essentially a large microwave or a large oven that you put your wood in, and it cooks the moisture out of it. It speeds up the traditional process of air drying by taking something that would usually take, let's say, 3 years down to about a 6-month process. But the quicker you dry your wood, especially walnut, the more color, the more natural color that gets sapped out of it. What you just saw us do was sand the table up to 320 grit, route out some pockets on the underside, and just get all those small details taken care of before we head off to our finisher for a spray finish. Like I mentioned before, this is our second project for this client, and on the previous project, they selected the acrylic urethane finish for its durability. That's been probably close to 4 or 5 years now at this point, and they've had absolutely zero issues with the surface durability on that table, so they've opted for this finish again. The only thing that we apply besides the acrylic urethane is our ceramic coating, and that's just to add an extra layer of durability, and it also enhances the look and feel of the entire piece. And here's the ceramic coating that I was just mentioning. So you can see right away, as soon as that product hits the surface, it drastically increases the overall contrast of the piece. And the nice thing about this product is the application is very simple. You simply take the microfiber, put a few drops of product on it, and then evenly spread that product out across the surface. Once you've applied it in a square no bigger than 2 feet by 2 feet, you can come along with your microfiber to remove the excess material that's been left on top, and you will be left with a beautiful, protected piece. Since our tables, when it comes to a technical woodworking aspect, are relatively simple, something that we really like to focus on to set us apart is the details. So you saw Randy earlier working on the recess for this logo, and it's a cast pewter badge that we had custom made by an artist, and we inlay one of these on to the client's desired location on every single one of our tables, because we find a lot of clients who come to us, they're not just buying our product because it's a table, they're buying it because it's a Black Forest table, and they want to sometimes show that off to their friends, and they value the brand. And funny enough, we have a table we're working on coming up here soon where they've requested that the badge go right in the middle of their base where it's entirely visible, and they want it stamped on both sides just because they love our brand so much. So that's very humbling and very nice to see. we can get these tabletops flipped over and bring them downstairs to get some inspection done and a quick look at the finished product here. Finally, we can attach the solid steel legs onto the underside of this table. So while these are just steel legs and they might look kind of simple, they are custom made for the table, and we've used different materials than you'll typically see used when it comes to a steel table base. The materials we've used here are solid 3/4 inch by 4 inch steel, which makes for extremely heavy bases, but it also allows the table to be much sturdier than it typically would. The other detail on this that makes it custom is the hole mounting locations. Being that this is a river table, we need to plan and make sure that the holes to attach the base to the underside of the top aren't going to land in the epoxy. Now, this epoxy is quite opaque, so even if we did that, you probably wouldn't see the inserts that much, but they might still slightly be there. So we like to try and maintain just the utmost consistency and quality, so we like to just mount directly into the wood. We always like to complete our inspection for the tables downstairs here in natural sunlight. We find even with the best lights that we can put upstairs, we still end up missing some of these fine imperfections that can oftentimes appear in such a perfect surface like this. So pull them in front of the door, pop that open, and it will show you anything that you've missed. Now, fortunately on these ones, we didn't have to take them back to the finisher and do a respray. So from here, they're gonna get packed into the crate. We will ship them down to our friends at Agua Caliente Band of Indians, and they will get them installed to that 5-star hotel. And if you guys wanna go for yourself to this hotel, feel free. They're down in Palm Springs. If you wanna see the other pieces, you'll have to book some time in the cigar room, but they are some really, really nice pieces that we've made. Let us know what you guys think about these pieces in the comments below. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video and watching, and we'll see you in the next one.